Making your own sauerkraut is not only easy and cheap, but it trumps store-bought sauerkraut on many fronts. Homemade sauerkraut is traditionally made through lacto-fermentation, which is a natural fermentation process, whereas store-bought sauerkraut may not always be fermented. Some are in fact vinegared or fermented using starter cultures. In addition, most store-bought varieties undergo pasteurisation during canning, and this eliminates all live probiotic content. To make your own sauerkraut, start by removing the outer leaves of the cabbage. The same process works for either green or purple cabbage. Splitting a large cabbage in half may be slightly challenging, so the safest way to go about doing this is to first pierce your knife into the middle of the cabbage, pushing it down as deep as it will go into the core, while supporting the cabbage with your other hand. Then push your knife down towards the cutting board to split open half the cabbage. Turn it 180 degrees and do the same on the other side until the cabbage is halved. Split it again into quarters and work on one quarter at a time, breaking it down into smaller chunks and removing the hard core as you go along. Rinse and repeat for all the quarters and set all the cabbage chunks aside. If you don't own a food processor, you can use your chef knife to slice the cabbage chunk by chunk into chiffonade as shown here. But if you do have a food processor, set it up with the slicer disc. Many food processors feature a 2-in-1 blade for slicing, with a thinner and thicker option on either side. I tend to lean towards a thicker option, as that will retain a bit more bite and texture to the cabbage after its natural juices have been drawn out of it. Shred all the cabbage into chiffonade, and when the processor bowl is full, transfer the cabbage into a large mixing bowl or container. Glass, porcelain or ceramic is preferable here. But if you must use stainless steel, be sure that your stainless steel ware is made from the higher 316 grade and not the more affordable and more commonly sold 304 grade. If opting for using plastic to ferment, be sure that it is BPA free. Once you get through shredding all the cabbage, it is time to add salt. The amount of salt to add is about 2% the total weight of the shredded cabbage. The best is to use either sea salt, Himalayan pink salt, or any natural salts. Some believe that iodine in iodized salt may inhibit the growth of the lactic acid bacteria responsible for the fermentation in sauerkraut, but that's a debate in itself. So to stay on the safe side, just avoid using iodized salt. After adding the salt, start massaging the salt into the cabbage. As you massage, the salt will react with the cabbage pretty quickly by extracting its natural juices. Once all the cabbage has wilted, with a good amount of juices extracted, scrape down the sides of the bowl and use your hand to compress the cabbage so that the level of juices come up to the surface of the cabbage. Then, place a plate on top of the cabbage and apply some pressure. The plate should be just slightly smaller than the circumference of the bowl. Put a weight over the plate to keep the cabbage submerged in its own juices. It is paramount that the cabbage is submerged below the level of the juices, as that is where the fermentation takes place. Also, unwanted mold may form on the surface as the cabbage ferments, but if the cabbage is fully submerged, it stays safe and any mold that forms can just be scooped off and discarded. Cover with a clean and dry tea towel and leave it to ferment for 2 weeks at around 70 to 75 degrees Fahrenheit. After 2 weeks, the color of the cabbage and the liquid would have changed and some mold may have formed. Remove the weight and plate and discard any mold that has formed. You will know that your sauerkraut is ready when you see a clear difference in color before and after fermentation. Also, you will definitely smell the difference in the fermented cabbage. Give your sauerkraut a quick toss and taste to check that all the cabbage has fermented evenly. If not, put the plate and weight back on and leave it to ferment for another week. The fermentation time depends on the quantity of cabbage and also the temperature. A larger quantity and a lower temperature would need slightly more time to ferment. To store your sauerkraut, you can either just put a lid on the bowl you fermented your cabbage in, or transfer it into a non-reactive container. Seal it with a lid and it will stay fresh in your refrigerator for between 4 to 6 months. Thanks for watching and see you next time. Cheers.